Hey everyone, and welcome back to Miranda Pitrone Art. I know I've been painting up a storm these days just because I needed some calming down time. How about you? I am tired of the social stuff online and just all the negativity, and I just needed some calm, quiet paint time for clearing our heads and moving on with life. So today I have a fun mandala on canvas. It's an 8x6 canvas, and I will post the size and all the details, the colors used, in the description. And then as we go, I'll give you an explanation of each step-by-step thing that I'm doing to guide you through this mandala. It's pretty whimsical, spring vibes. It's not at all how I had it in my head to start off, but I started off with some color palette ideas, so I'm going to take you there first. I go to color palettes, and in my color palettes I usually have the most recent ones that I've looked up, and I have to tell you, I could not find a palette that had plum, sage, navy, and coral. I looked and looked and looked, but I ended up just kind of mixing it together on my own. But I feel like it came out pretty nice. I'm quite happy with the results. So obviously I got stuck in this floral pattern because they just had so many gorgeous ones. I just couldn't decide. Okay, so this is what we're going to be creating today. Just a couple different angles. And this is on an 8x6 canvas. All I did was start with a black background. We'll be using the Decoart paints today, and then I have multiple tools that I'd like to show you, as well as a couple of paint pens, paint markers, to try out for some of the detail work towards the outer edge. It's going to be super fun, so stick with me and let's get started. So this was a stencil called the Seed of Life for Flower of Life. I think somebody also does it as 7 circles. So I will try to find a stencil for that. It fits the 6x8 canvas, or you can of course do other sizes. So I'm going to start off with white. I have painted the background black, and then this is called an acrylic rod. So this is going to be for our center dot. And then we'll outline. So I don't always use traditional ways when you have a stencil. I just kind of fill in where I want to, so you're welcome to follow the lines. You don't have to follow the lines. Sometimes people follow them exactly, and sometimes you don't. So I am going to be one of those sometimes you don't. So I'm going to outline each of these in the middle with white as flower petals. And I'm just using an angled dotting tool, one of the smaller sizes. And I start in the center of each side of the petal, and I'm not sure why I started doing that. I just like the look of the thicker, larger dots in the middle, and then you walk them out so they get daintier towards each end of the petal, so they're smaller. Alright, just gonna finish up these other 2 petals. And you don't have to be fast, you can just calmly dot out at your own speed, so sometimes you might need to pause parts of the video. So now I'm using purple Pizzaz, and I'm going to follow this outer ring all the way around. And this yellow one is the smaller of the dotting tools in this set. Alright, so you probably want to pause it here and finish out the ring. I've had a couple glitches. I'm not sure what's going on with technology these days, but we're going to finish off the ring and finish off the inner part all with this purple. So you'll see in a minute it's just gonna flip to that. So if you pause, you'll be able to finish out your circle all the way around, and then the inner part, see? So just take a pause if you need to catch up to where I am here. And so now I'm using the largest dotting stylus, which is the 3mm. And on each of these, I'm just going to call them petals, because if you actually see the floral seed of life, it looks like a petal. I'm going to drag it out all the way to the top of that arc. So it's about an inch long swipe of white. And it'll be at the point of each of the petals too, so you can start off with that. But you'll see this way too, you're just taking your time and pulling it straight out. The paint runs off the tool and you get the tail on the end. And so that'll give us 6 of these outer swipes. And sometimes I know people, it's hard to see the vision at the beginning. So I'm going to try to start maybe showing the pictures at the beginning of the videos again, just because that way you can kind of see where we're going with this. I know I had a couple people say that, oh no, I would have not have put those colors together, or I would never have tried those together, and I didn't like them at first, but it worked out in the end. So there are times as I look at it where, you know, I start to add colors and think, oh, it looks not the theme I wanted, and then you just can top dot or change it up a little to go through the process to where you want it. So this is the Etcher tool, and in between each of these you'll see where the circles connect. At the peak of each of these circles I'm going to take Night Sky, which is a multi-surface paint. It's one of the darker blues, and we're going to draw a swipe at the peak of each of these. But you see how it's just slow. Take your time, place it where you want it to go, and it's a lot easier. I know I probably say this every time I do swipes, but it sounds like they're done quickly. You know, everybody says swipe, swoosh, dot drag, even, you know, comma, stroke, everything sounds and makes it look like they're done quick, but you can just take your time and pull it into where you want it to go. It's a lot more purposeful, calm, and cleaner. Excuse me. Okay, so now this is Coral Blush, and Coral Blush is just one of my favorite colors. We're going to put it at the base of each one of those night sky swipes. I tend not to use a lot of orange, but I really like these corals. It's a nice pop of color, so I'm just going to steal now with the smaller end, and then put 2 little dots on either side. So while this is still wet, grab a smaller dotting tool or flip it around. The other ends are usually smaller, and then put 2 little dots at the base here. Giuseppe informs me, Giuseppe's my 5-year-old. Yes, he's 5 already. I know some of you have been following me since he was born. But he is 5, but orange is his favorite color. Orange and blue, he says. So that was part of the interest in this palette. Alright, so now on either side here, we're going to go with Williamsburg Blue, which is kind of like a dark grayish Even the night sky has some gray in it, the gray tones. But this Williamsburg is a good next step down. So we're just going to put a swipe on either side of each of these night sky swipes that we did here. So one good reminder with any tool as well is just to take your time, but you can also practice ahead of time to see how far something like this Etcher tool will pull the paint. So, you know, you get used to practicing with it, you know it pulls for about an inch until the tail starts to get thin at the end, or half an inch, but you can practice on paper or cardstock, and that'll kind of give you an idea for your designs. Okay, so now I'm going to take my 2mm stylus, which on this one is the blue, and I'm going to take the light coral shell color, and on either side of our dark coral blush, we're just going to tuck in a light dot here of the coral shell. This gives a fun contrast of colors. It's fun to just use lights and darks of similar colors for a palette as well. So now to make ovals, you can use eraser tips, you can use all sorts of tools. I have this silicone dotting tool that I use that makes slightly larger ones. So we're gonna grab some, maybe we'll go with a darker coral again here, the coral blush. And at the end of each of our swipes that we pulled out, the white swipes, we're going to put an oval of that coral blush. So it's towards, if you can see your stencil lines, it's towards the edge here of the design. And with this tool, you just want to kind of hold it like a pencil and then almost just make sure it stays flat to the surface, and you'll parallel with the surface, and you'll have the same size dot every time. It doesn't take a ton of practice, it's fairly easy to use. And see, like, I didn't have it flat there, so you just have to rock it down a little bit to make sure that the full tool touches the surface of the canvas. Alright, back to the etcher here. And we're going with a lighter, like sky blue, baby blue. And we're just going to continue our swipes along the side here. Now you'll see this is what I did. So I switched to the corals for a bit to kind of give our other swipes a chance to dry. And that way they didn't bleed into one another. Sometimes if the paint is still wet, you can't really get quite as close and they'll dribble and kind of blend into one another, and sometimes just make a little bit of a change here to what we might have wanted. So I'm giving it a little bit of a curl out too, starting out at the edges and then just kind of curling it down around the lower part. So each time I'm doing one of these swipes, it's a little farther down on the one that we're following, And so the head of it kind of has to tip out a little bit for the design. How are you guys doing? I'm sure you're doing awesome. So relaxing, so much fun. Just enjoy your time painting. I love hanging out with you guys. If you have a minute during the videos, I know on TV that you can't hit like and subscribe and all that, but if you're watching on a computer or a phone, or even just to say hi and comment, it helps out every artist that you watch on YouTube, or anybody for that matter. It helps out their YouTube channels for the algorithms. So just put a comment, put where you're from, put hi, put what you like, put what you don't like. I'm open for constructive criticism. Constructive criticism. I know we've had people from all over the world watching lately. It's so awesome to think that we can all connect through art this way. So now if you don't have lighter than this, you can mix a little bit of white in with the last color that you used. Each time you could do this actually too, to get your ombre, is you just take white and mix a little bit in with it each time. It'll make it lighter, 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 and then you'll get this effect as well for each round that you do, starting with the darkest to lightest. Okay, so now this is a sage green, very light sage green, and we're just going to use the 2mm to tuck them in here, one dot on either side of that element we just created with the swipes. And you can see I'm using the 2mm again, but I loaded it with more paint, so the dots are larger than the coral shell that we did earlier. So you can get various size dots using the same tool. You don't have to go out and buy a bunch of tool sets. Okay, now on the internal here, I'm going to bring the blue, the second blue we used for our swipes, in at the base of each of these petals. And I'm using the smaller end of the stylus this time. And now I'm switching to acrylic rods, and this is the 1/4 inch one. No. Yes, the 1/4 inch. And I'm using a foliage green. And at the top of each of our swipe elements, we're going to put a dot of the foliage green here. And now I'm using the smallest end of one of the dotting tools that I have. And we're going to grab that light sky blue and do maybe two, well, let's do three rows. And see, a lot of people I hear are calling this walking the dots now, so just for reference, to get the progressive size, you start at the top and then just work your way down around the element you're dotting around, and the paint will run off the tool, so the size will get smaller of the dots. Sometimes you run out. I had to dip it again, but I want to get down to that point where I was smaller again before I start doing the dots. Otherwise your dots will be big at the bottom and it won't go in progressive size. So sometimes too, you can steal, like I just did, you can steal just a little bit of paint from one of your dots that are already down and still wet. So we're doing 3 rows around here. Okay, so I'm just gonna pick up the pace here just a little bit more now that you guys get the idea of what we're doing. And just to fill it in here. So 3 rows of the lighter blue. You see how it starts to make a really fun design on here. So this way too, you can also do spirals and fireworks. There's lots of fun designs you can do by creating movement. And I like to do the asymmetry, so we're only going to do the one side here. And obviously you can do this design with all different colors too. Make it your own. So yeah, nice. So we're going to start filling in more with those. Okay, now I am upping to the 1 millimeter, yes, I can speak. And I'm doing a light lavender. And we're going to do 2 rows of this light lavender. So what I'm going to do is stack them one on top of the other like this, rather than going over the green dot we have there. And you'll see after we can kind of tuck a couple other ones in there to fill that space over the green dot. So it's kind of a planning ahead thing. It's just what I'm thinking in my head. So I'm trying to help you guys kind of think your process through here and help plan for yourself. So you either could have dotted over the dark green one already, and then you would kind of have a guide as to where you don't want to paint, because you'll already have dots down above the green. But I'm just in my mind keeping that space open because I do want to do kind of like a little triple dot there of light green. But you'll start to work out your own process the more you do these planning. You'll see as you go. Obviously, you know, we did a mild stencil, but I'm not following the lines of the stencil per se. I'm just filling in areas that I like to be guided by. So just 2 rows of this light lavender. I think Decoart also has a lilac like this one. See how nicely that's starting to fill in. So now above here is what I was talking about with the lighter greens. I'm using the 2 millimeter. And I'm just tucking the lighter green above each of those foliage greens that we put down earlier. And then while they're still wet, I just want to grab from each of them with the smaller stylus and put a little dot on either side here. But you could have done this light green first, and then you would have already had the spacing there once you wanted to put down the light lavender. So now I like to continue my color palettes throughout a whole piece. I think it just kind of helps it be more cohesive. So we're going to tuck some of that light green down in the center here in between our flower petals, just to kind of bring it throughout the piece. And just do 1, 2, 3 on either side of that one to fill in the space a little. Okay, now with the etcher, going back to that coral shell, we're gonna do, let's see, do I want, I think I'll do 2 rows, but I'll start off with 1 and then we'll go around again. We'll do the light coral shell for the first row of dots around the blue center on each petal. And I can only fit 3 in once I'm at the base of the petal here. If you can fit more dots around, go for it. I'm just filling in the color of the petal with ombre of coral colors. And the Etcher micro dotting tool just helps make smaller dots, but you can also use a really tiny stylus like this one and just tuck them in there. I'm glad I added the blue to this design. I was thinking of like orange, coral, green, purple, but I think it might have looked too Halloween-like, so I'm glad we added the blue to this one. So this is the darker coral blush, and I'm just adding it up here to the top petals, top part of each petal. And I don't think I'm going to carry it all the way to the end. I think at the ends of the petals I want to put some white up there, so I'm not going to make these too big. I'll leave room for the end of the petals to have white and just kind of fill it in up here. That way too, the white is a little bit of contrast to the purple, so you can kind of see your flower better. Does that make sense? So this is kind of in my mind what goes on when I'm picking the colors. I'm thinking contrast, I'm thinking what'll show up better, especially when you're doing pointillism designs within each other. Like if you're doing a full scene, when I do one of the island escapes, the palm tree island escapes, it helps you see each individual thing, like the palm tree or sand in the picture. Alright, so now I did this in a video a long time ago because the dots had actually blended together because I was impatient and they were wet on the dark purple ones. So I just call it chain linking. I don't really know what you would call it, but I'm putting it in between each of the dark purple dots. I'm putting a lighter lavender, and it kind of just gives it that, not a braid, like a chain link look. But it'll also hide anywhere in between where your dots may have blended together. I just felt like I needed a lighter color to come in here. So I'm not actually top dotting the purple, the dark purple, I'm putting it in between the spacing. Alright, so these I'm just going to steal a little bit from just to fill in the space down here and put a small dot in between the element and the larger one, the sage green. Alright, see this one here? You can reshape. If you have a misshapen one like this, you can kind of reshape, but I wait for it to dry now, and I'm just going to go over it with black to kind of reshape it because it got carried away with where it was supposed to stay. Alright, so I'm grabbing the night sky again. And this is another one of the 1mm ends, but I'm just going to do probably 3 rows. Let's do 3 rows of that night. And this way too, I have dark on one side and kind of lighter on the other. So you still kind of see that spiral effect happening. It'll draw your eye to the lighter side first. Okay, so still working on our night sky here. How are you guys doing? Okay? I'm sure it's going awesome. Just keep on sticking them in close to one another. Take your time, dot down around, and use the first line as a guide for the next. One more here. Okay, so now I'm going to grab that sage green again, and at the top of each of our, on top of each of our foliage green dots, I'm going to lighten it up with a top dot of that sage green. So you can see my larger green dots are a little wet, so I'm pushing the envelope here of putting the top dots on. You probably should wait for the bottom dots to be dry. That way it just doesn't run out of the space. Alright, so now I want to carry a little bit of the blue in. I'm debating how small I need to get to tuck it in here, but the night sky, I want to just put some dots in here of the darker blue to put it in that zone here. Again, I want to get away from the kind of Halloween, the green and purple. I think the blue helps that. Let's bring the blue here too on top of our green dots here. See how that looks. You can always dot over this. If you don't like the way that it's done, you could always dot over it. Some people will put cellophane over their piece once it's dry and add top dots just to kind of see how they like it. And then you just take the cellophane or saran wrap off. So here I just want to show you, I couldn't pull the tail out the way I wanted, so I switched to the Etcher Tool just to kind of drag it out so the tail would tuck down in there. You can use the styluses, it depends on your paint. See, this one's about ready to drip off already. So sometimes you can just kind of bring it around and tuck it down in, but that way I don't mess up in order to not mess up the darker dots I put down, I can just tuck it in here with the Etcher Tool. Kind of just makes it a little bit easier. But if you don't have it, you could use a toothpick, something else pointy. Your compass, the end of your compass has the point on it, you can drag it with that. Just be careful you don't puncture your canvas. Or even a mechanical pencil, but it might, if you push too hard, it might draw on your canvas. So, but just, you know, if you don't want to buy all the tools, or if you don't have them all yet, just trying to think outside the box of what you can use sometimes is helpful too for creating each piece. Then you're not tied to certain elements. And don't feel you can't do this, because you can do this. You just take your time, put your dot down, drag it out, and then whatever you're using. You can even use the smaller end of the smallest stylus and just tuck it down in next to the white. So really, you know, take your time with the swipes. Everyone, I know they look like they're done quick. I say this so often because people feel rushed. Just enjoy your time doing this, but take your time. Alright, so I'm going to do kind of like an offset here. So in between the spaces, rather than stacking them on top, I'm tucking a darker purple here, just in between the spaces of our lavender. So I start ahead of it and then in between, in between. And you can see too the different look that gives to the design. Plus that way too, I'm kind of closing the design at the top just a little bit more. And we'll do 2 rows of these. guys are doing awesome. Just take your time. If you need to pause the video, pause the video. Some of you are more advanced, feel free to fast forward through. I know a lot of you watch all the way through with me. That's so awesome. I wish I could be painting in person with all of you. It would be so much fun just to hang out and have paint sessions. I also appreciate all the emails you guys have been sending to say hi. I know we've had a lot going on. That's why this one is late. I don't like to get too personal about what we have going on, but you know, I appreciate the well wishes. Apologize for sometimes my voice with the thyroid nodules. Sometimes it just disappears, so I apologize. But you guys are so awesome and so supportive, and I appreciate you all super much, so much. So see how nice this is looking now. I'm just kind of looking at it, deciding what else to add, because I know we're not done yet, or I feel like I'm not done yet. I want to fill it out a little bit more. And I'm thinking some swipes and maybe bring in some more oval dots to the end there on the white. Alright, I'm thinking I'm gonna go with some of the paint pens. And then this one is a nice kind of periwinkle blue, so it helps tie it in. So I'm gonna do kind of a little swirl here at the top, and then just kind of curl it up at the end towards the bottom. So you can do this with liner brushes as well, but I know a lot of you have the fine point paint pens. So I'm starting at the center, curling it out and around, follow down our lavender and purple dots here, and tuck it in with a curl under that coral oval. And this kind of just gives your piece a little bit more of a whimsical look too. I started my spiral the wrong direction on that one, so I'll paint it over black and redo that one. Now which direction I'm going? I'm messing myself up here. There we go. But this way too, I'm doing the same direction all the way around. So you have the same element going into that space. So that little one I messed up on, I have to wait for that to dry on these paint markers and then paint it over black and redo it. But also that's the beauty, you guys, of having a background color. I mean, I don't know, on canvas you're kind of tied to having a background color, but that way I can just paint it over with the background color and just redo that. So, but if it was real paint, I would just scrape it off with a silicone tool, whatever extra I could, and then add the black over it. But that's another use for the silicone tools too, is fixing things or scraping off paint. I'm just going to spread it out here a little bit with the brush to just kind of tone it down a little bit. Okay, going back to our oval dotter and grabbing that night sky again to tuck over the coral blush, so we're overlapping ovals. So we have the coral from the center, now I'm bringing in the blue, and then after the blue dries I'll probably do maybe the sage green or a lighter blue at the edge just to lighten it up a little. See that one? I didn't quite stamp it down. You can go back and just tuck a little more and roll your paint to where you want it. Or not like that. So I'll have to fix that one. Scrape it off with my silicone, see? That's how you do with the paint, and then you get it off of there as much as possible. But see, you know, you watch the videos and obviously people can edit, but I just like to show you guys that there are ways to fix it. Don't throw it out. Don't be super frustrated. There's always ways to fix it if you don't like what you put down for paint. So that'll have to dry again, and then I'm leaving the blue on the orange dot because I'm going to redo it in that area anyway. It was mostly just around it that created a problem. And it was probably that I had let my paint sit in the palette too long, to be honest. It got a little tacky. Alright, back to this purple Pizzaz. And we are gonna do a nice big chunky swipe with that purple down and around. But again, like I said earlier, take your time. Swipe, swoop, swish, all these names are, they sound fast, but take your time. But you can see how nicely the asymmetrical design looks. It looks whimsical. It looks like it has movement. It makes your mandala look different than others. It's not the same rote design. Once you get going, you can add little flourishes like this, and then you have such a beautiful piece at the end. Not that the other ones aren't beautiful. You gotta start off with basics, but sometimes even just adding these flourishes look difficult, but they're not. You can do it, I promise. Just don't give up. Please don't give up. It's so enjoyable to have this to go to. And you can see now too, it kind of is at the edge here of the stencil design. And I don't want to go too far because on the horizontal sides it will be at the edge of the canvas if I go any further, so I don't really want to do that. Ugh, I got a chunk there in my paint. We're gonna use this and then I'll pluck it out with something after. There we go. Minor surgery. Okay, going back, we're gonna fix our little curl here when I went backwards. So this one you guys really got a view at fixing mistakes or fixing things that you didn't want down. But really you can do it with anything, so don't give up on each part. If you mess it up, don't like it, just redo it. Or even set it aside and come back and look at it again. Things will come to mind. So I decided to go here too, I just want to say, with the light blue. Super pale baby blue, and I mixed a little bit of white in with it. So now I'm going to grab this really pretty, it's kind of like a peridot green. And then I'm going to do S curls on top of the periwinkle that we pulled down. So kind of like a scroll. I called these S curls. I don't know what they're called. I've been using them for years, but a lot of people are calling them scrolls. You just kind of spiral around. It's about an inch long. And it's only in the center of the arc of the periwinkle one that we did. right, here is our final look at the piece. It came out so awesome. I'm super excited about this. I hope you guys learned a lot from it, from fixing mistakes to color usage to whatever, the designs, stencils. You can use them in any way, fill them in however you want. Don't feel confined to lines. Don't feel confined to lines. I can't say that enough. It's one of the reasons I don't normally use stencils or guidelines. I hope you enjoy the whimsical, colorful look of this. I'm glad we added the blue for sure. And I'm looking forward to future projects with you all. I miss you all bunches. I hope this goes out there with love to you all. Love to hear from you. I hope you are enjoying the rest of your summer. And I wish you all happy painting. Looking forward to some more videos coming out soon. So stay tuned. Alright guys, take care.